Today I want to share some tips and tricks with you on how to be a little bit more proficient with the tape measure, things that I've picked up and I use in my daily work routine. The first thing is using the tape measure as a guide where you can lock the tape measure into a given measurement, and then using a writing instrument you can very quickly lay out marks. If you don't have a writing instrument, you can always just use the bottom of the tape as a quick scribe tool in order to make quick fabrication layouts. This is something that I use quite often, as a matter of fact. Now in this case I have a board that has an oddball width to it, and I want to divide this board into 4 equal parts. In order to do that, I'll just rotate the tape sideways until I get it to a measurement that I can very easily divide by 4. In this case it's 28 inches, so that I can mark it at 7, 14, and 21 to very quickly divide this board into 4 equal parts. Now if you have a tape measure that has a hook on top as well as the bottom, like the Stanley Fat Max, this makes a very good straight edge. By the ability to flip the tape over and hook it on the opposite side, it makes it more rigid and it makes for a very quick straight edge. Now one tip or one thing that I like on a tape measure is to have a magnetic tape, but they can be oftentimes very expensive and they don't always work the greatest. The magnets aren't always the strongest. So I found it more convenient to have my own magnet so that I can pick up measurements by myself against metal. And it also works great as a little pickup tool. Really saves your knees from having to bend down all the time, especially when you get older like me. Now when you don't need it, you can take it off, set it on the clip, and it's up out of your way. So you have it when you need it and gone when you don't. The next tip: in all tape measures you'll have a little notch at the end that is designed for hooking onto nails or screws, where you can drive a nail and then use that to hook the tape in order to make a little makeshift compass, or as just to draw out an arc, though it's not the most proficient way that I've ever seen. Now with Stanley tape measures integrated into the tape of these regular Stanleys, you have a little V groove in there where you can very easily use that to drive a nail and then set the nail or set your tape measure into that V groove, and then that will allow you to make a very precise radius, so that once I have this locked in, I just set my pencil along there, just make sure that the clip is facing up, and then you can very easily rotate this around, and it makes a pretty good compass. This can also work on metal, but with metal you'll have to center punch your center point and then holding a nail. It's a little bit more cumbersome. It works a lot better on wood, like on this plywood, where you can make multiple arcs and you don't ever have to worry about the nail shifting around because it's seated. This next tip is something that I've actually used quite a bit in my life. So I have a triangle that I know the 3 sides to it, and I want to bring it down to this plywood to transfer those measurements onto the plywood and cut that piece accurately. So what I'll do is I'll use my finger as a guide and set it on the measurement from each side of the triangle, and then I'll strike an arc. And where those 2 arcs cross, now I have picked up the point of the triangle, and from there I can use either a straight edge or a chalk line in order to basically connect the dots. This is something that I used as a younger man in the roofing industry when we were decking roofs, and we ran across got into a corner where it had kind of an oddball shape for finishing out, and I use it today in millwright work for building transitions for conveyors as well. It's something that this is probably one of the tips that I use the most in my life. Now again, once those, you can very easily pick up those scribe marks, and it works on steel or wood equally as well. Now the next tip is, if you have a measurement, you don't want to really do the math in your head. In this case, we're going to find the center point of 57¼ inches. So we'll lock the tape in at 57¼ We'll flip the tape over, and then we can very easily find the center of that. In this case, it'll be 28 5/8. So it makes for doing quick math in the field. Taking measurements for inside measurements can sometimes be a little bit difficult. Now there's a couple of ways to alleviate this to get it a little bit more accurate. If you notice on the back of each tape measure it has a measurement, and that measurement corresponds to the length of the box of the tape itself. So that's the measurement to the back side of the tape. So you can take an inside measurement, lock your tape off, and then you can add the length of the box. In this case it's 3 inches for this tape measure, plus the measurement we locked off on, and add those up, and that's your measurement, though it's not the most accurate. You can also use any number of things like this square, measure to the inside of the square, and then add the width of the square in order to get an accurate measurement. But the one I really like doing is, in this case I'm marking it off at 10 inches, so the math is very easy. Work from the other side, and then you can add the measurement that you have plus 10 inches, and it's very accurate. The next tip is for marking out stuff. Now I always mark out with a triangle. You can do it in a couple of different ways. That way you know exactly where the point is that you measure to. I use the first one more often than not, and I have it right on that point. The second one works well as well, but the third one you don't necessarily know which side the mark you're supposed to use. The next tip is using your finger as a brake so that when you're rolling your tape up it doesn't collapse on you or close too fast, and it'll extend the life of your tape measures. These are just some of the tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. I hope that these are helpful for you, and if you have any others that I didn't mention here, please list them below. My name is Ben. You've been watching the Texas Tool Crib. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next one.